Thank you. Thanks for having me. Oh, sorry about that. Thanks for having me. My name's Adam Kolton. I'm the Executive Director of Alaska Wilderness League, which is the only national organization devoted exclusively to the protection of Alaska's national treasures, for which the Interior Department plays such a critical role in stewarding for the benefit of all Americans. Here because there are two of our national treasures in Alaska that are at grave risk, the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and the Tongass National Forest. As we speak, the administration is rushing to hold the first ever oil and gas lease sale in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And in the process, we believe it's sidestepping environmental laws, sidelining scientists, skipping required consultation with indigenous people. This process jeopardizes the very values for which President Eisenhower originally set aside this area, endangering not only iconic wildlife such as threatened polar bears, but the way of life for the Gwich'in people and their 15 villages. Beyond that, and perhaps most notable for members of this subcommittee, the Interior Department has also completely abandoned its commitment and the legislative requirement of the 2017 Tax Act that Arctic Refuge lease sales generate $2.2 billion in revenue, half of which for the federal treasury. Now, thanks to the subcommittee and the good work of the chair, last year's bill attempted to direct the Bureau of Land Management to set minimum lease sale bids to meet the required revenues of the Tax Act. And it was retained on the House floor in a strong bipartisan fashion. But unfortunately, it wasn't included in the final bill. And as a result, the BLM could, in the coming months, hold a lease sale that auctions off this cherished landscape at fire sale prices, setting up a future scenario in which Congress will need to appropriate even more money to buy back leases from oil companies that will bid low and attempt to sell back high. Last year, in response to this subcommittee's actions, we heard drilling proponents argue against any requirement to meet the promised revenue targets. This begs the question, were the highly touted revenue and oil bonanza production simply a ruse to catch a ride on the budget reconciliation train? Why are some now so fearful and opposed to language that simply enforces what Congress already passed? Might they be worried that major banks like Goldman Sachs are unwilling to finance Arctic Refuge oil and gas development? Alaska's Senior Center acknowledged that the goal here is simply to get leases out in the hands of oil companies because then, quote, it's tougher to throw roadblocks in place. The administration's intent here is clear. Get leases sold no matter the cost, or in this case, whatever the taxpayer ripoff may be. Considering this, it's not surprising that the administration is barreling toward a lease sale in ways that not only disregard the fiscal consequences, but also the impact to the resources on the ground. Take the issue of polar bears. Climate change and disappearing sea ice is causing bears to come onshore more frequently in search of food and to build their winter maternity dens. Yet the Interior Department has developed no meaningful restrictions on seismic exploration to prevent the killing of polar bears. If all that weren't troubling enough, Politico has reported the administration has silenced scientists and pressured others in pursuit of advancing leasing as quickly as possible. Given the reckless manner in which the Interior Department is seeking to hand over this national treasure to oil companies and its disregard for the requirements of the Tax Act, including its own revenue assumptions, we ask you to again include language in the underlying bill that forces the administration to meet its promises and its legal responsibilities. We similarly ask the subcommittee's help to rein in the administration as it seeks to exempt the entire 17 million acre Tongass National Forest from roadless protections. You know, we heard the president talk about planting 1 trillion trees. These are 800-year-old trees. This is America's rainforest, and there are enormous subsidies that are still intact for the Tongass. It makes no sense to, on the one hand, talk about planting trees to sequester carbon, and the other, subsidize the destruction of our most iconic, cherished American rainforest. The Alaska Wilderness League strongly supported Representative Blumenauer's successful amendment to last year's bill to end taxpayer subsidies for road building activity in the Tongass. And, you know, even now the Forest Service timber program is costing taxpayers about $30 million per year for a loss of approximately $600 million over the last 20 years. We urge you to include the Blumenauer language, which passed the House with a bipartisan 243 to 188 vote in this year's underlying bill. Doing so would protect U.S. taxpayers Southeast Alaska's vibrant outdoor economy, hunting, fishing, outdoor recreation interests, as well as wildlife and our climate. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and share our views.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stratton.